Well, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this lovely sunny Thursday. I got real pleasure in inviting a late guest to our event today, which is Martin Swift. I would say volunteered Martin, which I think is accurate, isn't it?
I think so. I've no issue with volunteering myself for this sort of thing. So it's a pleasure, in fact, Paul, to have been asked to come on today. So thank you.
Let's maybe revisit that at the end, see how you feel then, shall we? Couple of things just before we get started. I'll invite Martin maybe just do an introduction to himself shortly as well. But we've started a new series today, and I've obviously spent a number of these LinkedIn Lives talking about how we've used data and insights to help us drive the business, and how both I use that personally and from an organizational perspective. But for those of you, particularly who've looked at the detail of this, we've changed tacks a little bit now. And this series we're launching today is all about a series of events talking about from behind the wheel. We had some really great engagement, actually, and so many of you engaged with an article I did about a view from behind the camera, which was a post thinking about, we all prepare and protect our backgrounds now in these virtual scenarios to perfection, and, things perfectly put on my shelf for people to see, when we very rarely share what's behind the camera. And it got me thinking, it would be great to talk about some of the things that I see from my perspective, running Agena and having led organizations in the past. What are the things which I think about and consider, and some of the decision making that I go through? So we're going to move away from some of the data and some of the insight specific areas and talk more about some of that decision making process. Today, I want to talk about how we plan and focus on ensuring successful delivery of change. And actually what I want to talk about today is how we embrace negativity. How we really use negative people, negative thoughts to our benefit and to actually a greater success of what we're trying to achieve. And I'll come back to that shortly. But I want everyone to start today hopefully thinking about how negativity can actually fuel success. And we'll come back to talk that in some more detail. But let's learn a little bit more about Martin. So Martin, you right, just to maybe take a couple of minutes, give us a bit of an intro to you and kind of your role and maybe some of the things that you're most passionate about.
Thanks, Paul, and I appreciate that. And good afternoon, everybody. So as Paul said, my name's Martin Swift, sales manager here at the Agena Group. And I've had the very good fortune of working alongside Paul for the best part of 5 years now. Prior to that, I was working for one of the organisations that were acquired as part of the acquisition when Agena first formed. So my experience kind of in sales has always been ingrained in me from the outset. I've always been in sales roles and sales opportunities, predominantly in the space and the sector that we're operating in now. But the last sort of 3 years as sales manager, my role has always been about growth, kind of development and progression of our existing client base, as well as looking for new business and tapping into new markets all the time. So I'm very fortunate to look after a team of 10 individuals that are, like I say, are responsible for growth within our organisation. And more recently, I've been involved with kind of bringing new products to market, as well as tapping into new markets, as we say, new geographies as well. So it's a really exciting time for me, learning a lot from Paul and the rest of our senior management team along the way. But in a nutshell, that's kind of my responsibilities and things that I've been getting involved with more recently as well.
Great, Martin. And what about Martin outside of work? How would you describe that version of yourself?
Yeah, so I'm quite an outgoing person. Love my social life, social activities. I'm quite into my health and fitness. So the gym takes up a big part of my life, kind of in there 5 to 6 times a week. I play a lot of cricket as well. And as the summer rolls around again, the season's just started for me. So play locally down here where I live in West Sussex for a club called Worthing. Been playing since about the age of 7. So it's over 20 years in the game now. But yeah, that kind of takes up most of my summer for the next sort of 18 weeks. That'll be me most weekends for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, Martin.
All right.
So let's get into today's session then. So today's about how we overcome obstacles to deliver against our objectives. And as Martin said, that could be in many different situations: launching a new product, entering a new market, just generally implementing change. We had one of our extended leadership team sessions together this morning. We were talking about this very subject, actually. It's what kind of drove me to want to use the opportunity today on this LinkedIn Live to kind of share some of that some of that process we went through. And part of the session this morning, Martin volunteered to join us on this LinkedIn Live. It'd be great later on just to kind of cover how Martin felt through that session, maybe some of the things which we discovered and Martin's perspectives. I thought that'd just be great to add to the session today.
Yeah.
Well, let me just kind of set the scene. So I guess a lot of my roles historically have been in the role of delivering change, whether that's my job as a project manager, program managers, director of programs in many different sectors and organizations. And fundamentally, what we're trying to do when we're delivering is to move us from one position into a different state, and lots of those projects, lots of those programs are taking us from where we are today and moving us to somewhere different. And what we generally will spend our time doing is planning the steps and the actions we need to take to get us there. And typically that's done in a more positive and proactive way. So if we're launching a new product, thinking about taking a product into a new market, we'll talk about, well, do we have the specification of the market? Have we assessed our competitors? Are we clear on our commercial offering? Are we clear on the brand that we're going to enter that market with? And do we have our product launch plan in place? All proactive, positive steps we can take. What rarely happens is we spend the amount of time we should in all the things that are going to stop us. I have lost count of the number of times we've executed the plan, got to the end, maybe hasn't gone as well as we could, and some really clever person in the team has gone, well, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Because that thing that stopped us, I always knew about, but I was never encouraged to share it. I guess we've grown up in an environment where the saying I got very, very used to earlier in my career, where people said, don't bring me a problem. Just bring me the solution and just get on with it. In many times in business, we see negativity as people individually having issues, individual not being motivated or contributing to what we're trying to achieve. And I think we suppress people's concerns and negativities all too often. We are much more biased towards the positive and the actions we need to undertake. And my concern, and I guess my experience has shown in many different situations, we generally focus on the symptoms. So we have a problem today. We don't really want to spend too long on that problem. We deal with the symptom that we have today. We fix that and we move on. We've done a great job. What happens 2 weeks later is that cause or that obstacle has manifested in a slightly different symptom. And now we go and fix that instead. And what I really wanted to talk through today is the power of pausing, the power of spending some time on the real root cause and properly satisfying yourself. You've got to the heart of that problem or that obstacle, and you've taken proactive action to overcome. Now, this is a challenge we face every day. We love to work in a world, generally lots of us are against deadlines. We're fighting external pressures. We're fighting internal demands. And lots of us will probably think, well, I just don't have time to pause and be really negative and think about everything that could go wrong. I just encourage you to think about the value that brings. Some of the conversations we had today, and I'll Martin, ask you to kind of come in shortly. We touched on a number of areas where we're looking to move forward our business. This year's a big year for us in terms of growth, diversification, and transformation of what we do in our sector. And I really invited people today and set the scene today to say, look, just be really negative. I don't need answers. I don't need solutions. I just want problems. I want the stuff you worry about but don't talk about. I want the negativity that you're not encouraged to share. Generally, what you learn through that with your teams are all the disbelief that people have in what you're trying to achieve will manifest itself in negativity. And whether that's right or not, bringing that out on the table, having a conversation, re-educating people can massively increase people's motivation to support the change you're trying to deliver. Yeah. What it can also do is identify things you've been blind to. We all have a certain perspective. We all have a limited way of looking at an issue built on experience, expertise, knowledge, and what we've been exposed to. And what was great today when we picked up on a couple of our barriers was everyone had a slightly different perspective of those issues. Everyone had a slightly different connotation, a slightly different bias towards a different negativity. And it'd be great, Martin, maybe just to talk a little bit initially about how did you find that session this morning when all I wanted you to do was be negative?
Probably for me, an interesting concept. I know Paul probably know this and say this, but I'm quite an optimistic person generally, and I kind of try and radiate positivity as much as I can, whether it's at work or outside of work, encouraging my own team, even with myself and kind of peers around me. So to sort of sit back and try to be negative and just purely negative, not even try and be too almost constructive with that either was a challenge, certainly for me. And I'm certainly someone who's been guilty in the past, as you touched on at the start of this session, Paul, about looking for the solution straight away. I'm not sitting there actually getting into the finer detail of where the root cause potentially of said problems coming from. I'm looking at it on a surface level and thinking, right, well, let's fix this now. Here's the solution. And it's a bit kind of what I'll call a Band-Aid fix to the problem. Yep. And what I really enjoyed this morning, though, was and credit to yourself, Paul, is you created a really kind of safe space and environment for people to be brave enough to come out and be negative about the situation. I think fundamentally that's really, really important in these environments, because I do think in business, in life, in fact, people look at negativity as a real kind of taboo subject, and we shouldn't go anywhere near it. And you know, it's almost frowned upon to be talking about things in a negative connotation and just to slander this and slander that or go into too much detail on something. But to create a safe environment for kind of that extended leadership and management team this morning to be able to be confident and brave enough with each other to be negative, I think was a great starting point. And I think over time we kind of realised that a lot of what we're saying, it was about going into the root cause of it. I was very much getting into the trap of talking about the consequence of what was actually going wrong. I wasn't actually talking about the problem. I was already talking about the consequence. Maybe that's because we're in the middle of the consequence right now, so it's fresh and it's in the front of your mind. But to stand back and to talk about it with the rest of the team and go into that deeper level, as I've said, was a real positive. And at the end of it, there is a positive experience and a positive end where you're all going to come away with actions and deliverables to fix said problem or said issue or said negative position. So yeah, on the whole, a real positive experience for me. But to kickstart the session going, and I was like, this feels really alien to me. I kind of didn't know where to start, but with a bit of encouragement, yeah, we certainly got there.
Yeah, and what was great, Martin, I guess, when we talked about and to really challenge on some of those constraints, and I guess for everyone else who obviously wasn't in the session, we were talking about what's going to stop us achieving our objectives as we've entered into the new financial year. You know, as I say, we've got some plans around some significant growth this year and some diversification in what we do as an organization. And that brings challenge and that brings difficulty. You know, we expect a lot from our teams. Our teams are under a lot of stress at times, a lot of pressure. We've entered a period where we have a significant pipeline of opportunity, which we're feeling some of those struggles around how we move to implement those in the capacity. And I guess, as you were very vocal this morning, Martin, that makes it really hard to manage our clients and manage against those service levels. And, you know, and fair credit to you, we've delivered some outstanding growth particularly over the last few months, which is really biting us now in terms of the rest of our delivery. And what we were talking about today is, well, what's that root cause? You know, when didn't we act? You know, did we not act 3, 4, 5 months ago in terms of creating the capacity to resource what's landed now? You know, did we actually all wholeheartedly believe we could deliver that level and that scale of growth so quickly? And therefore, we need to mobilize those people. And that's what I mean about getting down to the root cause. And I think it came down to, we've been a little bit surprised at the scale of the growth we've seen so quickly. We probably didn't plan for that as a scenario. And now we're dealing with the consequence. And it's an absolutely fabulous consequence for us to have. And we will work that through, and we're working really hard to maintain our service levels to our standards. For me, and my reflection would be, if we'd spent a little bit longer beforehand thinking about that constraint of resource, we would have had the plans that we could have executed quicker at the time we needed them. And part of this is just that. Part of this is about saying, if we end up in this situation We've already planned through the things we need to do, the actions we need to take, and at the point in time we need to make them. Lots of us have grown up, have become experts at firefighting. You know, I've worked with many people who are at their best when they're in the worst situation and they have to find the way out. Most of us will not put the time in up front to preempt those issues, to think about that worst case scenario, and to plan the action, the cause, and the route that you will take out of that issue. A great example in our sector, within the parking sector, is the government's intention to introduce policy change and introduce a single code of conduct, how we as an organisation operate, and the rules and the guidance and standards that we need to adhere to. This has consumed me for maybe 3 years now. It's been an ongoing activity since a private members bill brought in 2014. We are now 10 years into that process. It's legislation that had royal assent 5 years ago, and something which we are actively working with government policymakers to ensure delivers the right outcomes. But if I sit and think negatively about the impact that could have on our business, which we've done many times, what that's allowed us to do now is build some really clear, concise plans and course of actions we will take if that policy ever actually happens. But what we're not doing is now spending time worrying about it. We understand what will happen. We understand the consequence. We have a plan to react and to deal with it, and we remain incredibly confident the Parking Act has next to no impact on Egina Group. And that's come from being really negative. That's come from sitting and analysing, understanding, and planning what we will do when that situation happens. And I'm hoping there's a lesson for everyone to think about when you're going on this journey of change and you're wanting to deliver some level of transformation, the value of pausing and being negative. Because all that negativity, which sometimes is just worry, sometimes is well-founded issues that could occur in the future, is an opportunity to plan an action against it. And as Martin, I typically have a very positive bias to most situations, to most environments. I love change. I think change breeds opportunity, but you have to be in a place where you can see that opportunity, not at that point being consumed by concern and worry because you've not planned to be in that situation. If we step back to where we started and we step back to planning out a change and thinking about where you want to be and moving yourself into a different place, we'll generally envisage all of the positive steps we need to take, and we will focus on the outcome we're trying to achieve. So if we want to deliver double-digit growth in our business this year, we'll think about how big's our pipeline need to be, what extra resource do we need to secure, how many more new clients do we need to deliver? What can we do to extend our share with the clients we already have? All very positive actions we will take. What happens if we lose one of our largest clients, which delivers the greatest opportunity for growth? In that situation, what's our reaction? What are the actions we take? What are the steps that we enact at that point? And for me, it's planning for those scenarios. It's planning for those outcomes which you don't expect. In a project world, I know we've had a number of people from kind of project delivery join our sessions previously. It's what we typically class as the happy path. So if everything goes as we expect, these are the 15 steps we'll take. One will follow the other. Some will do in parallel. It's the path that we expect and predict will occur. And I think we're all very, very good at thinking about our happy path. I don't think I've delivered a project or a change in 20 years that has ever gone as I planned when I set out. Because stuff happens. Outside influences occur. Internal influences occur. People change their minds on priority. And then our happy path is no longer happy. But because it's the plan we have, we try and stick to our plan rather than deviate and think, well, I'm in this situation I've planned for. I'm now executing that plan. Martin, just coming back to yourself, a couple of things that would be great guests to just explore is just from that session this morning. Can you see how maybe with your team you could use those techniques to tackle some of those challenges that you face a bit differently, and maybe you could talk through some thoughts that you've had on how using that negativity could actually help you become more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned around sort of my team. In fact, that team of leaders, this morning as well, is one thing that really kind of resonated with me out of the session is, I know it's a bit cliche, but a problem shared is a problem halved. And often when you share these thoughts or these struggles, these negative kind of environments with a team of people, all of a sudden you realise potentially the problem wasn't as big as first experienced, or all of a sudden, as you mentioned, there's several different viewpoints on that, and you're all actually in a very similar mindset towards wanting to fix said negative issue or said negative place. And I think we often get very isolated and almost in a silo kind of set frame of mind, and we don't kind of broaden our horizons. But when we get into these states, and to actually then share that and realise that you're not on your own here, actually there's multiple people that want to help you, and people want to help people ultimately, and we're all in an organisation or a business all trying to achieve the same thing ultimately. We've all got a vision, all got a goal and a path that we're trying to hit. To actually have the influence of those other individuals around you, whether it's in your own team or kind of on a peer level below you, above you, it's a really encouraging environment to be in and then develop. So for me, that was a massive takeaway, and to use that within my own team is something I'll certainly be doing moving forwards, and allowing, like we mentioned at the start, a safe space to have these conversations, making sure no one is going to be ridiculed for having these negative thoughts. Obviously, it's important not to let that spiral out of control and just let it become a moan up about things, and it's got to be controlled, of course. But I think in the right way, the right people, it's a really positive experience. And like you say, to come back out the other side of it with deliverable actions, things you're going to put right, so that you're not just putting, as I mentioned, a band-aid fix on the problem. You're actually looking at a strategic fix for the long term. We're not talking about something that's going to fix something for the next 2 weeks. We're talking about for the next 2 years and beyond, in fact. I think that's a big thing for me, is taken away from this morning. We shouldn't just be looking at the small picture and fixing something immediately in front of us. Strip it right back, address it, talk about it, find the root cause, find the root issue, and to touch on one of the elements this morning was around, and I'm sure most organisations or businesses will relate to this, was this kind of competition between sales and operations, chicken before the egg, cart before the horse, which one comes first? And it's a constant battle between the two in terms of resource, operations saying you're not giving us enough work, sales saying you can't keep with our demand, etc. And that was kind of a bit of a conversation this morning, but it was great to air that. And as I say, the conversation that led us down the path to actually finding a real positive outcome about how we're going to fix that. I mean, what resource, potential additional finance we need to pump towards this project, or the headcount, for example, in said team as an example. And it was a real positive experience by the end of it all. And yeah, it was good to have the relevant stakeholders all agreeing by the end that, we did realise at the start there wasn't enough believability in what we were doing, or confidence in what we were doing 6 months ago. But now we set that's all in place, aired our thoughts, and everyone's now on track to moving back in the right direction. So for me, certainly, go back to the original question, it's certainly a technique I'll be using both within my team and I think with peers as well, moving forwards to air these situations, getting back to the root cause, so you've got a longer term plan to fix it in the future.
Yeah, and I guess for me, part of that, Martin, is there's two really important questions if I'm being very honest, I always ask myself, and maybe what I took from today is I need to ask them same questions to a wider group of people for a bigger perspective, which is, how will we achieve what we want to achieve? So let's focus on, double-digit growth this year. How will we achieve that? Well, lead generation, build our pipeline, qualify our deals, close our opportunities, hit customers' expectations. All of those are the actions we will take to achieve that objective. Asking yourself the question, what's going to stand in my way? Why will I fail? It gives you exactly the same outcome, but it allows you to think with a negative bias towards those things that are going to get in your way. And look, in any organization, in most sectors, delivering double-digit growth is pretty challenging, and things will get in your way. So when you get into that situation where you say, well, yeah, I predicted this was going to happen. I predicted our competition was going to react try and be more competitive to restrict our growth. We've already thought about that, and this is the plan we've now got. So we're now taking these actions to overcome it. And it's working that through. It's, resetting those baselines so you have absolute focus and absolute clarity on your happy path. As I said before, the positive steps you take to achieve the outcome you're aiming for. But when someone or something knocks you off your happy path, you're still pretty happy because you predicted that was going to happen. You know exactly what you're now going to do. You're not in that situation thinking, well, what do we do now? The most powerful thing for me is whenever you're leading a team, leading a change, trying to transform anything at all, you will always be surrounded by doubters. And a lot of the time, those doubters will be silent. Because they don't feel safe, to your point earlier, Martin, to share their worries and concerns or their understanding. Maybe they're not fully on board with what you're wanting to do. Maybe they've not fully understood the message of why you're wanting to change. And creating an environment where those doubters can be heard can potentially move them into that supporter, to say, look, I absolutely hear your concern, but that's not going to be an issue for 12 months. So let's agree what we do in 12 months if that issue occurs, but let's not let it dilute what we're trying to achieve right now.
Yeah.
The moment we hit that problem, this is the plan that we'll enact. This is the action we'll take. But until then, let's not allow that to dilute the positive, happy path that we're on. And I think, for anybody to kind of just pause and, if you could take one thing from this session today, can you answer both of those questions? Can you answer the question, what's the actions I need to take to be successful? And why am I going to fail? And I think if you can answer both of those two questions, you're in a good place. And if you can't answer the second point, I'd encourage you to create that environment, embrace negativity, give the doubters a voice to be heard, and build that all as part of your planning. Martin, I'm keen, just because I think we're going to wrap up now. I've kind of learned spending 30 minutes on these LinkedIn Lives kind of holds the audience much longer if we go too far over. Sure. But what's the kind of one thing I guess you take from today that you feel you can make a real difference with moving forward that we've not touched on already?
Great question. I think for me, on a complete personal level, is embracing the negativity. I know you're saying something we haven't sort of spoken about, but I think it is such an important point for me in that I've probably been quite naive to thinking everything's got to be positive, everything's got to be good, got to be finding solutions all the time to things. But I think for me, it's actually embracing negativity and seeing it in a light that, done properly, can be used for a real advantage. So I'd say for me, it's actually embracing the fact that these negative conversations can be turned into a positive. And it's not always about thinking, everything's great, everything's perfect. We've got to be adaptable and actually recognise there's time to stop, reflect, and expose ourselves to the negativity to come out the other side of it a lot stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree, Martin. What I would say is a lot of the times what might be seen as negative is actually just people's concerns. Vast majority of people will want to be successful and be part of something successful, but they'll have concerns and doubts about how we get there. And airing those and sharing those, which typically will be seen as negative, I think for me is just a really positive way of being more successful when you're looking to deliver against your outcomes. And more importantly than all of that actually is having the whole team with you, having everyone on the same mission. Everyone's been heard. Even those concerns and those future doubts, will get dealt with at the point that they need to get dealt with. And you can all now focus on execution and delivery. It's a technique I've used a lot. I think if I'm, reflecting, and a great thing about these LinkedIn Lives when you're sharing content like this is you do reflect and think, am I kind of doing that as much as I can? And I think following this morning session and today, I think there's definitely a couple of areas I'm going to go and ask for some challenge for some people, delve a little bit deeper into those things, why we can fail. We can all get carried away and excited about the opportunity. And I'm right now leading one of our products into a new market and are so ambitious about it and so passionate, enthusiastic about it. maybe I haven't stopped and reflected on why I'll fail. And maybe a great part of doing these sessions is it gives you some opportunity for self-reflect as well. So look, I really appreciate everyone who's joined us today. I know lots of people also use the opportunity to listen back, which you can always do. Just jump onto my LinkedIn profile, go down to events. You'll see all of our previous LinkedIn lives there, along with this one. I do feel like I need to finish by asking Martin whether he's still happy he volunteered this morning, because to be absolute fair to Martin, we joined this with 5 minutes to go with no prep. And I think, your insights today, Martin, have been incredible. But just, interested to see whether you still feel like you should have volunteered or not.
No, absolutely. I've no hesitation in that. And if I was asked again, I'd do it again. So no problem at all from my perspective. And I actually appreciate you giving me the opportunity more than anything, Paul, to come on today and share kind of my thoughts after this morning's session. So, if you ever short again, give me a shout and I'll be straight on.
That's great. Well, maybe you could do your own LinkedIn live session, Martin. You don't need an invite from me. Maybe there's something you could do on your own, but we'll maybe catch up on that another day in a less public.
Well, maybe I'll check the comment section after this and see how popular this one was. Maybe a pipeline dream for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, look, I appreciate everyone's time today. We're gonna close the session there. Thanks very much for everyone who's jumped on. Thanks for those people watching back. We will be back again soon. We'll be announcing the next content in the next few weeks. We're likely to go to a 3 to 4 week cycle on these LinkedIn lives, but as you've seen, we're trying to increase the content and our voice on LinkedIn. And as always, just keep that feedback. It does keep us going. And I'm hoping there's a couple of things from today that you can take back into your role and help you overcome those obstacles and be more successful in your delivery. So with that, well, thank you all again, and we'll see you all very soon. And thanks again, Martin.
No problem. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, mate.